Hello and welcome back to another episode. Today I want to talk to you about this. The Starship Enterprise 1701-D. The starship from Star Trek The Next Generation. Jean-Luc Picard's baby. And frankly, I could talk about the starship all day. I do, after all, own the Star Trek Next Generation technical manual. Yeah, that's how cool I am. And actually before this, I had a whole box of Star Trek Next Generation Enterprise-D blueprints, as though they actually came from the Mars Planasia, is it, shipyards. So this is actually a step down from where I was in high school. But no, I'm not going to talk about the starship today. I want to specifically talk about this toy. And to me, this is a toy. It's not a display model, even though Star Trek has often been on the sort of the high-end adult display end of the toy market. You know, these are things to show other people. These are not things to be played with. This toy for me was one of the most exciting things I'd ever seen back in the late 90s when I first saw it on a shelf. Toy or not, you haven't seen this particular Enterprise on display in these videos. And transforming Starship Enterprise, but I'll talk about that in a future episode. Because for most of the time that I've owned it, it's been broken. Now, it all starts back in the late 90s when my brother and I were very excited to go to the Doctor Who Museum in Llangollen in North Wales. And at that point, Doctor Who wasn't on TV. It was a bit more of an underground sort of cult TV programme. And frankly, it hadn't been on TV in our lifetime, I think. I'm pretty sure the last episode the original run went off there before I was born. And then it came back obviously in 2004-ish, 2005. So Doctor Who was a niche thing. And it was at that museum that, in sort of the toy section where you could get old Doctor Who figures, for example, I got a K9 toy from the sort of the toy shop at the end of the museum. That they also had other sort of Doctor Who-y type toys, and they classed in that sort of sci-fi sort of genre. It's a whole different world. People just lumped this stuff together. They had Star Trek toys as well, and I saw this thing up on the shelf in all its glory, in its box, the transwarping Enterprise flying towards you out of the box. And I simply had to have it. Now, I badgered the adult that was with me quite intensely on this one, and eventually they caved and they said, okay, fine, I'll treat you to it. And it was quite an expensive toy. I can't quite remember how much it cost, but it must have been about £35. It wasn't cheap. Partly because of this tendency for Star Trek fans to put these things on display. You know, this is a premium toy, and that's exactly what I did. I went home and put this thing on display. In fact, I got this, and because obviously I was getting something, my brother had to get something, so he got a phaser, which I still covet to this day. In fact, one day I might have to sort of steal it from him. But anyway, I put this thing on display on top of my wardrobe, and it came with a stand, this sort of gold plastic stand that sort of swoops away from the Enterprise in almost reminiscent of the three-dimensional chess sets that you see sort of in the series. And the base of that stand is a Starfleet symbol, insignia, and that's what the whole thing sits on. Plastic, fairly good quality, a little bit wobbly. You know, if you sort of wiggle the base, the thing would the Enterprise would wobble on top, but it was solid enough. And I put it on top of my wardrobe, and every night I went to sleep just seeing the Enterprise swooping overhead. Until one day, one fateful day, I do believe my mum was trying to find something in the boiler cupboard. In my room we had the boiler, and above it was the shelf where all the towels were drying, or bedding as well, I think. And she was trying to get something from that cupboard. She sort of elbow knocked the wardrobe, you know, not deliberately obviously, and the Enterprise fell off, and the base snapped away. And it snapped in such a way that the little plug that goes into a hole in the bottom of the Enterprise here just was left in the ship. And that was it. I couldn't put it back together again. I didn't want to glue the Enterprise to the stand because I quite liked as I still do today, sort of flying it through the air using my hands. But it was essentially broken, but I couldn't bring myself to throw it away, though. It's one of my prized possessions, and for the longest time I've been moving from place to place. It's always been with me, but it's always been sort of on top of a shelf or on top of a bookcase or something. In this particular space, it was on top of this bookcase for a long time, just at the top up there. And I thought that was it. I thought the Enterprise was down. I thought it was never coming back. I thought it was just like the two Klingon sisters who eventually brought down the Enterprise-D in the movie. It just, it was never coming back to its former glory. That is until the 15th of May this month. On the 15th of May, I had a spark of inspiration, and I have no idea why I hadn't thought to do this before, but what I did was I took the Enterprise and I drilled out the plug of plastic that was left in the hole. That also actually opened up the hole as well a little bit. My thinking being that I'm not interested in selling this thing on. It's not a collector's item for for pristine auction somewhere. I'm not interested in that. I just want to have the ability to look at this thing in all its glory. So I thought, yeah, okay, I'll drill out that bit with a lovely variable speed hand drill that I have. And I inserted a 1/4 inch camera adapter. So the adapters that are designed to go into, well, almost anything, I imagine. So that you can attach like a base plate for a camera, or you can attach it to, in this instance, a camera gooseneck, an arm, which I got off eBay for £15. Not too bad, actually. It's quite a stiff gooseneck, so I can sort of have the Enterprise in various positions. And the whole thing attaches to a shelf or to a surface using a clamp at the end of that gooseneck. And what we have is this gloriously posable now version of the Starship Enterprise, and I couldn't be more pleased. This is, I suppose, in that sense, this is almost a making video. I'm sort of sharing with you how I problem solved an issue with the ship. But that's not the best part about the transwarping Enterprise, though. You see, this thing transforms. Yeah, the trans in transwarping is actually a reference to the fact that it changes into the Enterprise from All Good Things, the final episode of Star Trek Next Generation, where I believe the Enterprise-D meets a 3-nacelled, sort of very similar looking version of the Enterprise, but much more in the way of guns, captained, I do believe, by Admiral Riker. And that is one of the most exciting things that I'd ever seen. When I first saw this on the shelf and I realised that this thing transformed, I mean, I love Transformers, it was incredible. And so now I have my transwarping Starship Enterprise on display, and you may have noticed in a couple of videos recently, it's sort of just up there over my shoulder. That's where I have it at the moment. And if I'm honest, when I'm editing videos, sometimes I have this thing clamped to my desk and I just I love it. I absolutely love it, and I love that I found a way to fairly elegantly bring this thing back from the dead. It comes off the stand quite easily, like that. There we go. Just don't want to drop it, obviously. That would be tragic. Dropped it and smashed it. There we go. And she's ready to continue her ongoing mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations. As ever, guys, until next time, do take care. Bye bye.